Hello, this is Olha Tamanova. Welcome at Ukraine Media Center at Ukraine Forum. It is the ninth year of war and 222nd day of our fight for our independence. We have the following list of events for you. At 2 p.m. we will have Denis Marchuk from Ukrainian Agricultural Council. We will be discussing the grain corridors and, in general, the Ukrainian agriculture. Later, we have the meeting with Mr. Chernyshov from the Ministry of Territories Development, and we will be discussing the winterization. Right now, we have with us Sergei Khlany of Kherson Regional Council. Hello, Kherson is Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine. Sergei, what is the situation in Kherson region right now? What can you share about the results of the so-called referenda? And what is their influence on the situation in Kherson and Kherson region? The pseudo-referenda has had no influence on Kherson and its residents. This sham activity is merely the psychological trick that the enemy wanted to do, because the panic among the occupiers and the collaborators that has recently instilled, and their understanding that they will not be able to sustain themselves in Kherson region, was why the occupiers started with this trick of pseudo-referenda. And under this pretext, they also blocked people leaving the occupied territories through Vasilievka. Then they shot at the people at the crossing point, and then they introduce special IDs for crossing the checkpoints, which they introduced since October 1st. But again, in order to get one, they need to provide all the copies of all the pages of their passports, and also the children's birth certificates, and also the males' military certificates. And also in some communities there is no internet, and all of this has to be applied digitally. So the occupiers have started blocking the people leaving, and in fact people are voting with their feet. It becomes impossible to stay at this territory, which is being controlled by the occupiers. They are introducing some mobilization troops, which they plan to include as a part of the Russia's forces, and this is one of the main worries of the people in the occupied territories. So also they started to visit people in their presidential places to discover men aged between 18 and 35. For now, they are not summoning them to the army, but the idea is for now to list the men and to possibly use them in the future as a part of those volunteer troops. And people are quite pro-Ukrainian in Kherson, so if they get any weapons, the weapons will surely be used against the occupiers who are occupying our land. So I believe this will be used mainly for using our people as the mobilizational resource or labor for the construction of their fortifications. Therefore, our people are trying to leave in mass numbers. We always encourage people in advance to leave the non-government controlled territories, and this would simplify occupation. But it's still not too late now. It's still not too late to leave to save themselves and their relatives. Okay, we have seen in some open sources the pictures from different locations in Kherson with the military holding our Ukrainian flag near the watermelon monument and a photo from Mikhailivka. Is it possible to unveil this information right now, and are our troops advancing? Well, Arkhangelsk and Merylyubivka have been liberated officially. This is what our president has announced. They are fully controlled by the Ukrainian military. They were liberated a couple of days ago, and this information was announced yesterday because we are already sure that we will be able to protect them and not let the enemy back. Indeed, over the last days, we could see the photo from Osakorivka, indeed, as you're saying, was the watermelon monument. We also saw our military at the entrance to Mikhailivka, also in Khreshenivka near the monument, which also implies that Zolota Balka is also controlled by our military, and this shows that our military are advancing along the Dnipro River closer to Bereslav. The information is not officially available yet, but we can see in the social media of the Russians who are panicking, who are calling this panic redislocation or redeployment. We can see those photos there, and their next point of redeployment is going to be Bereslav. So we truly support them in this movement. Of course, we do not support their deployment there. We want them to go back to their Russia's Federation. We want them to do this as fast as possible, and we will contribute to this in whichever way we can. For now, the information in the social media of the Russians is what confirms the success of our military. We believe in the armed forces of Ukraine, and we are liberating our land. Yeah, we hope that quite soon the General Staff of Ukraine will inform us about this positive news we were waiting for. Sergei, we can see that there is quite active work of the opposition movement in the occupied lands. We could see that the deputy head of the Collaborators administration was recently exterminated. Yes, he was, and Mr. Zhuravka as well, the well-known collaborator who was found in the place where he was spending night, and yeah, there are some explosion happened. So together with his security guard, they went to hell probably. So these are some of the examples of how the collaborators and traitors are being destroyed together with the warehouses of the enemy and different other military locations of the enemy. Despite all of the searches by the occupiers, this partisan movement is getting stronger, and also it is distributing leaflets, sharing the information, also taking off the Russian flag and putting up Ukrainian flags instead. So this kind of information and coordination work, and also the extermination of the traitors, this is a synergy of this victorious mood and the occupation of our land. Sergey, I believe we have some questions here in the studio. If yes, please use the microphone. Sergey, hello. I'm Olga Korostylova from Ukraine Forum. Do you have any statistics about the Ukrainian citizens kidnapped at the occupied land, and how many of them have been kidnapped, and how many of them have already been found dead? Well, I don't have exact numbers to answer your question, and right now it would be difficult to even find this information, because quite often the occupiers illegally apprehend people more than once. In some cases, one and the same person has been apprehended 3 times already. So, for instance, one of the mayors of the communities who has been apprehended by the Russians since the very first days. There are some examples of people leaving the occupied territories after the first such apprehension. Some people also expect that after the so-called filtration, they will be left alone, but after the second time, many people are apprehended again, and after that many people actually take this decision to leave their region. And also there were some examples in Kakhovka that after a man was apprehended, he was found dead not far from that place at the riverbank of Dnipro. So in some cases people unfortunately don't come back alive after this illegal apprehension. And speaking of the humanitarian situation in Kherson region, what is the situation with the winterization and preparation for winter? What is going on with critical infrastructure? Kherson does not have any gas supply available. The Russians have disconnected Kherson from the system, and they are blaming Ukraine, saying that it was the government of Ukraine that did this. But this is, of course, not true. They are contributing to the deterioration of the situation, and right now Kherson, especially the right bank part, is not ready for the winter at all. At the left bank the situation is slightly better, but not really considerably better. The newly deoccupied locations show that the entire infrastructure is destroyed. There is not even electricity available. So it's a task of the government and volunteer organizations, charities, to support the people in those locations to survive through this humanitarian crisis, to support them with food, medicines, and also some construction materials for them to fix their roofs, their walls, and to survive through the winter. So it is quite a critical, quite difficult situation. We can only hope for the occupation of the region, and then we will be able to provide for the humanitarian needs. So in case of deoccupation, for which all of us are waiting, are the local governments ready to evacuate people? Because we know that winter is ahead, and it will take time to restore the infrastructure. Yes, indeed. Some work is underway to get ready for the evacuation. Some humanitarian hubs are being established to host people. People live in the newly deoccupied territories. there are opportunities to get accommodations, get support in the job-seeking efforts, and also to support people in traveling further to other regions of Ukraine. This is already happening in Zaporizhia and in other places. This work will have to be supported further. Whether the local governments are ready to resume their work, for sure, yes. And together with the military administration, the charities are working closely in the deoccupied lands and villages. They are visiting people, supporting them, and the more deoccupied villages, the more deoccupied towns we have, the better it is. People will surely find their help. Thank you, Sergei. This was Sergei Khlein, the Chancellor of Kherson Regional Council. Thank you for joining us. We believe in the Ukrainian military and we keep working forward for our victory. Thank you.